when I was 20 years old, I didn't have much money, but I already wanted to invest in myself and find a way to make money through the internet. I was constantly searching for opportunities because deep down I knew I didn't want to spend my entire life surviving paycheck to paycheck. Around that time, I heard about high ticket closing. At first, I didn't fully understand it. The idea sounded almost unreal to me. People were saying you could earn commissions simply by talking with clients on calls and helping them make decisions. No warehouse, no physical labor, no boss standing behind you all day, just communication. The more I researched it, the more obsessed I became. Then I found a course that promised to teach the entire process. The problem was that it cost $3,000, and for me at that time, that amount felt enormous. I didn't come from money. Spending that much on an online course sounded risky, almost irresponsible. Still, something inside me kept telling me to do it. I paid for the course in 3 separate payments, and when I finally got access to it, I realized very quickly that this wasn't some magical shortcut. The amount of information was overwhelming. There were hours of videos, sales frameworks, psychology lessons, communication exercises, objection handling techniques, and role play examples. It consumed a huge amount of time and energy. Some days my brain felt completely exhausted after studying, but little by little I started understanding something powerful. Sales isn't about manipulating people, it's about understanding people. That completely changed my perspective. The course taught me how to communicate with a prospect and guide them toward becoming a client if the offer genuinely matched their situation. I learned how to ask questions correctly, how to listen carefully, how to understand pain points, how to create trust instead of pressure. Most beginners make the same mistake. They focus too much on talking, but real communication comes from listening. That realization alone improved the way I interacted with people in everyday life. Not only in sales calls. For months, I kept learning quietly. Nobody around me really understood what I was trying to build. From the outside, it probably looked strange. Spending thousands on an online course with no guaranteed outcome sounds crazy to many people. And honestly, I understand why. The internet is filled with fake promises, but I kept going because I wasn't chasing fantasy anymore. I was chasing possibility. About a year later, I finally joined a sales team and started training seriously. That was the moment things became real. Suddenly, I wasn't just studying theory anymore. I had to perform. I had to understand the product we were selling. I had to understand how to present it clearly. I had to learn different payment methods, financing options, and customer concerns. Most importantly, I had to learn how to stay calm while speaking to complete strangers. At first, the calls were painful. There's no other way to describe it. Some conversations were awkward. Some prospects sounded uninterested. Sometimes I spoke too fast because of stress. Other times my mind went completely blank in the middle of a sentence. After certain calls, I sat there replaying everything in my head, wondering why I sounded so nervous. But repetition slowly changes you. Every uncomfortable conversation became experience. Every mistake became feedback. And eventually, something started clicking. I stopped focusing entirely on trying to sell. Instead, I became genuinely interested in the person on the other side of the call. I wanted to understand their goals, frustrations, fears, and reasons for wanting change. That changed everything because people can feel when you truly care. One day, I got on a call with a prospect who seemed serious from the beginning. We spoke for a long time. I asked questions. I listened carefully. The conversation flowed naturally, and little by little, I realized something important. The offer genuinely made sense for him. I wasn't forcing anything. No, I truly believed it could help him. By the end of the call, he agreed to move forward and bought the program, which cost $3,200. When the call ended, I looked at my commission, 10%, $320. I just stared at the screen for a moment, not because it made me rich, but because of what it represented. I had spent around 45 minutes speaking with someone, and I earned more money in less than an hour than I used to earn in 2 entire days working a normal job. That realization hit me deeply, not in an arrogant way, in a liberating way. For the first time in my life, I truly understood that income was connected to value, communication, and skills far more than time alone. Until that moment, I unconsciously believed that making more money always required more physical effort and more hours. That single call shattered that belief. Suddenly, the world looked different. I started realizing how many opportunities exist that most people never even explore because they assume certain lifestyles are impossible for them. We grow up surrounded by invisible limitations created by our environment, school systems, and social expectations. Most people never question those limitations. That day, I did, and from that moment forward, I understood something that changed the way I viewed my future forever. No matter how impossible something looks at first, everything becomes possible once you develop valuable skills and refuse to stop learning. After that first commission, something changed inside my mind permanently. It wasn't about the money itself. $320 wasn't enough to completely transform my life overnight. I still had responsibilities, I still had bills. I still wasn't financially free, but the experience destroyed a mental barrier that had existed inside me for years. Before that moment, making money online felt distant and unrealistic. It always seemed like something reserved for other people, people with connections, people who were naturally talented, people who already knew what they were doing. Then suddenly I had proof, real proof. I had earned more in 45 minutes than I used to make in 2 full days working a normal job. Nobody could take that experience away from me anymore. Nobody could convince me it was impossible because I had already seen it happen with my own eyes. That realization created hunger, a different type of hunger. I became obsessed with improving, not because someone forced me to, because I finally saw a future that felt bigger than survival. From that point forward, I started treating sales like a serious craft instead of a side opportunity. Every day I studied communication more deeply. I listened to call recordings, I analyzed conversations, I paid attention to tone, timing, energy, and emotional reactions. I started noticing patterns. People rarely buy because of logic alone. Most decisions come from emotions first, then logic afterward. Understanding that completely changed the way I communicated. I stopped trying to sound impressive. I stopped over explaining everything. I stopped trying to control conversations. Instead, I focused on clarity. People don't want confusion, they want certainty, and certainty comes from confidence, simplicity, and trust. At the same time, I realized something else that nobody talks about enough. Sales is mentally exhausting. Many people hear the word sales and imagine easy money. What they don't see are the endless conversations that lead nowhere, the rejection, the pressure, the uncomfortable silence after asking difficult questions, the prospects who suddenly disappear after sounding extremely interested. Some days felt amazing, other days destroyed my confidence completely. There were moments where I questioned whether I was truly good enough for this. One bad call could stay in my head for hours. I would replay every sentence trying to understand what went wrong. But eventually, I learned an important lesson. Emotions cannot control performance. If athletes stopped competing every time they felt nervous, they would never succeed. The same applies to sales, business, and almost every ambitious goal in life. You must learn how to function even when doubt exists. That lesson became valuable far beyond closing calls because life constantly tests your emotional stability. Sometimes you feel motivated, sometimes you feel lost, sometimes you feel powerful, sometimes you feel completely behind. Yet discipline matters most on days where motivation disappears. That period forced me to mature quickly. I started understanding why high income skills matter so much in today's world. Schools teach people how to follow instructions, memorize information, and pass exams, but very few people are taught how to communicate effectively, negotiate, persuade, or create value independently. And those skills change everything. Communication alone can completely alter your opportunities in life. The way you speak influences relationships, business, networking, leadership, and confidence. Most people underestimate how powerful clear communication really is because they spend their lives avoiding uncomfortable conversations. Sales removes that fear very quickly. Once you spend enough time speaking with strangers, handling objections, and navigating difficult interactions, regular conversations stop feeling intimidating. You become calmer, more direct, more aware, and those improvements slowly spread into every area of your life. At the same time, I noticed another shift happening inside my mindset. I stopped glorifying traditional work structures as the only path available. For years, I believed success had to follow one specific formula: study, get a stable job, work for decades, repeat the same cycle forever. But the internet changed everything. Suddenly, one laptop and one skill could create opportunities that previous generations never had access to. People were building businesses from bedrooms, creating brands from phones, earning incomes from communication, creativity, and knowledge instead of only physical labor. That realization expanded my vision massively. I started seeing the internet as leverage, not entertainment, leverage. Most people scroll endlessly every day, consuming distractions without realizing the same device could completely change their financial future if used differently. That thought stayed in my head constantly, and the more I improved at sales, the more I understood that valuable skills create freedom. Jobs can disappear, companies can replace employees, economies can change unexpectedly, but skills stay with you. Nobody can remove your ability to communicate effectively once you develop it. Nobody can erase your experience. Nobody can take away the lessons you earned through failure and repetition. That understanding gave me confidence during uncertain moments. Even when I doubted myself, I knew I was building something real internally, not externally, internally, and that distinction matters. Because external success can disappear quickly if there's no internal foundation supporting it. During that period, I also became more aware of how fear controls most people's decisions. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of looking inexperienced, fear of wasting time, fear of taking risks. I understood that fear personally because I had experienced all of it myself before buying that course. $3,000 terrified me at the time, but now, looking back, I realized the bigger risk would have been staying the same forever. That investment forced growth out of me. Without it, I might still be sitting somewhere wondering whether making money online was even possible instead of knowing it was. And that's the difference between people who stay stuck and people who eventually change their lives. Some people wait for certainty before taking action. Others take action despite uncertainty and learn along the way. As time went on, sales stopped being only about money for me. It became a mirror. Every weakness I had eventually showed itself through conversations. If I lacked confidence, people could feel it immediately. If I sounded uncertain, prospects became uncertain too. If I tried too hard to impress people, the conversation lost authenticity. That environment forced me to improve mentally faster than almost anything else I had experienced before. Because in sales, excuses don't matter. Results expose everything. At first, that pressure felt overwhelming. There were calls where I performed terribly, calls where I forgot important details, lost control of the conversation, or failed to create enough trust. After moments like that, I sometimes question whether I was really made for this kind of work, but something inside me refused to quit. Not because I enjoyed failure, because every difficult moment taught me something useful, and over time I noticed a pattern that changed my perspective completely. The people who improve the fastest are usually not the most talented. They're the ones willing to stay uncomfortable long enough to grow. Most people quit too early. They experience rejection a few times, feel embarrassed, and immediately retreat back toward comfort. They want confidence before taking action, but confidence is usually created through action itself. Nobody starts experienced. Nobody starts smooth. Nobody starts fearless. The people you admire today probably sounded awkward once too. That realization helped me stop being so hard on myself. Little by little, I became more composed during calls. I learned how to slow down instead of rushing. I learned how to listen carefully instead of waiting for my turn to speak. I learned how to guide conversations naturally without sounding robotic. And strangely, the less desperate I became to close deals, the better my results started getting. People can sense desperation immediately. When someone sounds emotionally attached to the outcome, it creates pressure. But when you genuinely focus on helping the prospect make the right decision, the conversation becomes calmer and more authentic. That lesson applies far beyond sales. Desperation weakens performance in almost every area of life. Whether it's business, relationships, or opportunities, people often chase outcomes so aggressively that they destroy the natural flow needed to achieve them. I started understanding the importance of emotional control. Not suppressing emotions, managing them, because emotions constantly fluctuate. Some mornings you feel unstoppable, other mornings your confidence disappears for no clear reason. If your actions depend entirely on emotions, your progress becomes inconsistent. That's why discipline matters so much. Discipline allows movement even when feelings become unstable. That realization changed my daily habits too. I became more intentional with my time, more careful about what I consumed online, more aware of how environment affects mindset. I stopped spending hours absorbing negativity from people who had already accepted limitations for themselves. Many people unknowingly project their fears onto others. The moment you try something ambitious, they immediately focus on what could go wrong. Not always because they hate you, but because your ambition reminds them of risks they never took themselves. I learned to stop seeking approval from people who didn't understand my vision. That was difficult at first. Humans naturally want validation. We want reassurance. We want people around us to say you're doing the right thing. But sometimes growth requires walking through periods when nobody fully understands what you're building yet. That period taught me independence mentally, not isolation, independence. There's a difference. I also became more realistic about success itself. The internet often sells fantasies of instant wealth, luxury lifestyles, and effortless freedom. Reality looks very different behind the scenes. Building skills takes time, confidence takes repetition, results take consistency. Most success stories people admire are built on years of invisible effort. Nobody talks about late nights, self doubt, failed attempts, embarrassing mistakes, quiet sacrifices. The glamorous moments usually come later. Understanding that helped me stay patient because patience becomes powerful when combined with consistency. And honestly, one of the biggest lessons I learned from that entire experience is this: your life can change incredibly fast once your mindset changes. Not magically, not overnight, but direction changes everything. Most people stay trapped for years because they never change direction. They repeat the same routines, same habits, same fears, and same environments while hoping life somehow transforms itself automatically. That rarely happens. Growth usually begins with one uncomfortable decision. Buying the course was uncomfortable. Joining the sales team was uncomfortable. Taking difficult calls was uncomfortable. Yet every uncomfortable step expanded my world a little more, and eventually I realized something important. The goal was never only money. Money matters, of course, but freedom matters more. Freedom to choose your future, freedom to develop yourself, freedom to wake up excited about progress instead of feeling trapped inside routines you secretly hate. That first commission opened my eyes to what was possible, not because it made me rich, because it proved that learning valuable skills can completely alter your trajectory in life. And once your mind truly understands that possibility, it becomes very difficult to settle for a limited version of yourself ever again.